Hi, Tam, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to see you. Where are you based in Australia?
I'm in Sydney.
All right, the big city. And
Mm-hmm.
today we're going to go dive deeply into your home birth, right?
Yes, yes,
So, do you
yes.
want to talk us through, did you decide to become pregnant and, try, or was it did your baby just come on in unannounced kind of thing, or what happened for you?
No, so we were trying on and off for about a year and a half. Um, I felt spirit baby very close, like hovering really close for a long time. But she, as they all do, they come in their own time when they choose to.
Hmm.
And I think that also prepared me for like her birth, like her arrival, because I was just so happy to be carrying her that for me I was just so relaxed about when she decided to come and just unattached to the due date. But anyway, back to conception.
Mm.
Yeah, we tried on and off for about, a bit over a year,
Mm.
which to some people is not a long time. But I think when you're wanting something so badly, every month can feel like, you know, such a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was really hard. That was one of the most challenging things I've had to do. But like
Mm.
I said, that prepared me to surrender for the birth itself and
I love
motherhood.
that. Love that.
Yeah.
And one piece that I loved, that you shared, before coming on this interview was that you worked a lot on your fears before having your birth. And I really love that. And I'd love to like dive
Mm.
really deeply into that. But what you did during your pregnancy to prepare for this home birth. Was it always obvious you wanted a home birth, or was that something that awoke in you as you got pregnant?
It's so funny. I couldn't remember, and then the other day I was searching for something in my WhatsApp chat history, and the word home birth came up with a close friend of mine, and I clicked on it, and apparently I'd said like 3 years ago, I want a home birth, and I didn't remember saying that. I felt like my memory of it was like I became pregnant and then I said I wanted a home birth, but actually it was obvious I was obviously entertaining the notion of a home birth way before I became pregnant. And that I think actually my child decided, not me.
Mhm.
So yeah, the fear part, that was huge. I think that every person goes through fear. Different, we all have different fears. Everyone's is different, but I
Absolutely.
feel as though my fear was very much centered around two things. So the first was pain.
Mm.
Like, what's the pain going to be like? Am I going to be able to handle the pain?
Yeah.
Because it's an unknown, right? Like, you've never experienced, well, your first time, you've never
Yes.
experienced childbirth. So people can tell you what it feels like. People can tell you, oh, the pain was like this. But again, you have to feel it to really just know what it's about.
Yeah, and everyone's
Um,
different. Everyone
yeah,
feels it differently. Also, like,
exactly,
is it in the back? Is it in the front? Some really
exactly.
feel it as sensation of like just pressure. Some feel like absolute pain. Like it's a scale, and
It is. It
no one else
is.
can tell
Yeah,
you. No one else can tell you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And everyone has different pain thresholds too, right? So that's like another key factor. So pain was a big thing. And then my other huge fear, I would say probably more than the pain, was I don't want to be transferred to hospital.
Yes. I think a lot of
But
home birthing mamas have this, and I really
yeah,
want to hone in on this because I think it's so. I love that this was a thing that you worked on. I'd love to hear the ins and outs of how you
yeah,
did that.
yeah, yeah. So the way I worked on that was, well, I worked on them both together. And the way I worked on the fear of being transferred was, okay, what does this home birth mean to me? What does it represent?
Mm.
Why do I want it so badly? I think a
Mhm.
lot of women go in and they're like, I just want a home birth, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they're just like, I just want the comfort of my own home. And that's a beautiful desire. But then some want more, For me, it wasn't just the comfort of my own home. It was, if I go to hospital, I'm going to be out of control. I feel like my power is going to be taken away from me. I'm going to have no advocacy, even though you can advocate for yourself. I just feel like birth, in retrospect, it's the most deeply vulnerable time
Yeah.
that you will probably ever find yourself in, or one
Yes.
of, you
Mhm.
know. And I don't think I could have advocated for myself had I been in hospital.
Yes.
And so working through those fears, I worked through them probably a couple of days, well, obviously ongoing, but then really deeply a couple of days before I gave birth.
Mm.
So I had my own therapy session. I did a lot of my own inner work. I'm actually a holistic psychotherapist and intuitive energy healer and guide. So
Mm.
I just really, explored my limiting beliefs around, you know, my power being taken away. When was I a child and I felt powerless or disempowered? How is this an inner child wound? What was really coming up for me, like around all of this? And I really let go of a lot of it. And then I did work with my doula, who was meant to be well, I planned for her to be at my birth, but she was actually away, so she didn't make it.
Mm.
But we did a lot of work before around, my fears, and she did some energy work on me and some womb healing as well. So that was really beautiful
Mm.
and much needed. But then, to be honest, some stuff, like I felt like waves of those, like the remnants of fear came up in my transition, like right before my daughter arrived earthside, like literally as I was birthing.
Mhm.
I said to my midwife, I want to go to hospital. And she smiled. And like, I'd remembered that, I'd done a lot of reading and research. And I remembered before that, right before the baby comes, like you start to say you can start to say some odd things, or just things that, you wouldn't normally feel or think, as
Absolutely.
your body, your soul's leaving your body to go to a cosmic realm to go and collect, your soul and your baby and bring it earthside. So of course, all these, strange things are happening.
And
So
this is key information, and like this will happen for 99.9% women. When I talk about this sometimes on like Instagram, someone will pipe
yeah.
up and go like, I didn't have the transition. I had no fear. It's like, fine, okay, you're the 1%. Let's talk
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
99%, right?
Yeah,
So
let's
like
talk to the
most,
majority.
you know what I mean? Like most women will have this,
Totally.
right? It's a part of the
Yeah,
journey. And
yeah.
as you mentioned, everyone has fears, and most will also have anxieties and fears
Mhm.
come up throughout their labor. However, when you worked on them before, both if you know the physiology, you know it's coming, it can be that you can go like, you can catch yourself and go like, okay, I'm probably close to having a baby, like I'm probably in transition. It can help you through that. But also, the fears tend to not overwhelm you because you've already faced them before. They're not kind of hidden and then like surfacing their ugly heads in a sense. Like you know them. And so you can meet them even in that very vulnerable, but also very powerful state, right? It's that thing, like, as you
Mhm.
said, it's like you're the most vulnerable, but you're also the most powerful at the same
Powerful.
time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's so true. If you haven't worked on the fears, I think they
Mm.
come up really amplified during birth. And I think that that does hinder things. And I think it does definitely, most definitely impact the outcome you have. So I know women who haven't worked through their fears, and they were like so adamant on home births, and they ended up
Mm.
in hospital with C-sections. And not that that's a bad thing, like that's what was meant to happen for them. That was what
Mhm.
their babies chose as well, remember? But I also think that that could have perhaps, been different if they had really done some gritty, and it's not pretty inner work facing those fears before giving birth.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's why I really wanted you to speak to it, because I think it's so key information that, you know, you can't hear enough. Like,
Mm.
don't shy away from your fears. And especially the one on transfer. Like, if you're
Yes.
wanting a home birth, don't avoid, because a lot of women will choose home birth because they're also afraid of the system, afraid of the hospital, and like, fair
Mm.
enough, like
Yes,
100% valid.
absolutely fair enough.
But
Yes.
you should choose home birth because you love home birth, because you trust home birth, because you
Mm.
trust your midwife, you trust yourself, you trust your
Mm.
baby, not
Yes,
because you're
not
you're
based on fear.
choosing, yeah, not because
Yeah,
you're, not choosing something else. And
absolutely.
you know what I mean? And so, but then obviously you can have that and still fear the transfer, because at the end of the day, we can't control birth and it might happen. Like, you or your baby might be also that small percentage that do need medical help,
Mm.
and so
Mm.
it's important to also look at that. And then, one way that I work with women is that do a plan B, right? So if you're having a home
Mm.
birth, in case of transfer, what do you want that to look like? How can, if
Mm.
I'm there, how can I advocate for you? What do you want within the hospital realm?
Sure.
If it is a true emergency, this and this might happen. What would you like then? Like, to as much as possible, because I think a lot of women have that feeling of like, I'm going to be out of control and it's going to be happening to
Mm.
me.
Not
So if we,
fully.
yeah, right. So if we already
Mm.
before look at what if that happens and how can you feel
Mm.
like as much as you can feel okay with the outcomes, must that happen?
Mm.
And then you can put that away out of your mind, and know that it's taken care of in case of that little percentage of chance that that happens for you. And then you can
Absolutely.
focus on your dream birth. Is that something
Yeah.
you did at all or think about
I
those
didn't. I was so adamant about having a home birth that I was like, "I don't
things?
even want to entertain plan B, like, it's
Right.
not happening." I was, like,
Yeah.
so which I think worked in my favor a bit. I was, like, I'm quite stubborn, like, when I want something, I have my mind set on it, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"There's nothing getting in my way." So,
Mm.
then maybe that's not such a good thing with birth, but, you know, I I think obviously my midwife would have briefed me on that,
Yeah.
if this happens, then we may have to transfer you. But she was also very confident. She was like, look, you fit a really good profile of, no
Mm.
complications happening. And,
Mm.
I did so much reading and research and listened to podcasts about how birth is just so natural and it's become a medicalized process and it's so
Mm.
safe for the most part. I mean, women were birthing on the land for,
Mhm.
for so long, literally just on the land, that I think I just surrounded myself in that energy that I didn't believe that I could be transferred. And maybe you can call that naive. Like, of course, there's a chance everyone can be transferred, but I think I was just so focused on the outcome I wanted to happen. My work was actually in like detaching from that outcome in a sense. So that's what part of like the work I did on, fear, because I was so like attached to the home birth that
Yeah.
I was like, well, what does it mean if I don't home birth?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I did, if that makes sense.
And what was the answer that you got from that?
That if I don't home birth,
Yes.
well, I had to kind of look at the shadow parts of myself and feel like, okay, well, I would feel like I failed.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And my
Yes.
husband reminded me, like, there's no failure here. Like, this is
Mm.
actually something that's really important to you and something that, like, you want. So he wants.
Mm.
But again, at the end of the day, all you can hope for is a positive birth experience with, a healthy baby. And
Mm.
most of the time, the hospital will just say a healthy baby. But no, I think the positive birth experience
Mhm.
is imperative.
Mhm.
It's not just having a healthy baby that counts.
Mhm.
And so he reminded me, like, what's the difference really? Like, if I give you scenario A and scenario B, and you have like the same outcome in both, but it's a different location, what does
Mm.
it really matter?
Yeah.
And
So
I was
how can
like,
the experience be
true.
empowering and positive
Yeah,
in if it was in hospital? It's that kind of stuff you
yeah,
explored.
yeah,
Yeah, well, that's kind of similar, isn't it? In a sense, you might not have written your plan, but you were entertaining the idea of like, how can I actually have a positive experience in case I have to be there?
exactly. And I think what was interesting is even though I thought I'd completely worked through all the fears and, everything had dissipated, when I was transitioning I said to my midwife, what happens if we go to hospital? And she smiled at me and she was like, well, we can go. It's completely your choice. However, I'm going to remind you that you've told me so many times you don't want to go. And I'm just going to let you know that if we do go, they're going to induce you as soon as you get there. And I don't think you've told me before that you didn't want that. She was almost speaking to me like, here, like, you're not thinking straight now, like but she was honoring she was honoring me. She was saying, if you do want to go, we can go. Like, absolutely. But I'm just letting you know, I'm just reminding you that you've told me how much you want a home birth.
Yeah.
And so that was like a really, like, such a powerful moment, because in that moment, I closed my eyes. I went to the entrance of the hospital. I don't actually even know what the hospital really looks like, but I went to a hospital in my mind, and we had driven there and I got dropped off. And I just went to all of this in my mind. And then in my mind, I got back in the car and I came back into my body, into my home, into the birthing pool. And I was like, no, no, I'm doing this here. Of course I'm doing this here. And
Beautiful.
I had to go there like fully. So we talk about how before birth, I did go there, I explored, but I didn't go deeply, deeply there,
Mm.
like visually to the actual
Mhm.
hospital. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. And
Mhm.
my baby came very soon after that.
I love that. It's like you,
Yeah,
yeah, you kind of coached yourself, you journeyed with yourself to that place and back to really feel viscerally in your body. I mean, that's how we work, isn't it? When we guide other people to find their inner answers, it's like you do that in a journey of like, well, let's look at that.
yeah,
How is your body responding? How do you feel in that place versus that place? I mean, that's great. I love that. I love that you
yeah.
did that for yourself.
Yeah,
But
I just feel like I was forced to, like
yeah,
I was at that
yeah.
crossroads, right? Where it's like I'd been laboring for 12 hours. I was tired, and I was progressing, but I was exhausted. And sunrise, I'd gone into labor like 11 p.m. the night before, and my waters broke at like 3 a.m. or 2:30 a.m. And like I felt really safe in the night because we've got a lot of windows in our home, like floor to ceiling windows. And
Mm,
my husband had put like butcher paper on the windows. But like as soon as the sun came up, I felt very much like an animal. Like I felt
mm,
exposed. I felt unsafe,
mm,
and my midwife even turned around to me and she was like, what's holding you back? Because you were like progressing
mm,
quite well in the evening. And then as soon as the sun came up, you started like you were halting, like you kind of stopped. And I said, like, it's just, I feel too exposed, like the light. And no one
yeah.
could see me. That's the funny thing. Like, no one, it's not like
No,
we
but
had
still,
neighbors.
no, that's totally, it's very physiological. So, like
Yeah.
light does that. It
Yeah.
awakens you back into your neocortex more, and you want to stay in that primal birthing brain. And that's why women
Exactly.
seek out rooms without windows,
Yeah. Yeah.
toilets without
Yeah.
windows, like
Exactly.
darkness, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
let's go back, because we have just jumped off
I know.
to your
I
transition and
know.
birth. So let's rewind to,
Yes.
the early signs of labor approaching. I'm hearing maybe that you were kind
Sure.
of quote unquote overdue or close to, maybe were you later in your like 41, 42 weeks when you birthed, or
No, she came on
no?
her due date.
Oh, on her due date.
Yes, yes,
Mm,
which I was surprised by because I'm highly intuitive, and
mm,
I just was so people would ask me, when are you due?
mm,
And I would just say July, like I would
mm-hmm.
just give a month. And she was born July 6th. So it's crazy that we're doing this today because she's turning 1 next week, which I cannot
Oh,
believe. I know.
mm,
Um, so back to, yeah, so she came on her due date. People would ask me like, when are you due? I would say like early July. I was so, again, detached from when she was coming. I was just like, oh, she might come 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, whatever, she'll choose. But yeah, so what was funny is I remember very vividly, my birthday's July 2nd.
Mm.
And my husband and my dog and we went out for brunch and for my birthday, and then we went out for dinner that night. And I was starting to feel like I had a beautiful, very easy pregnancy, which I do feel very grateful for. But I was starting to feel really like she was pressing on my bladder, and I was starting to feel like uncomfortable. I was like, okay, I feel like I've kind of had a bit of enough right now, although I loved being pregnant. So we go out for dinner, and I'm going to the bathroom like so many times. I'm like, gee, she's like really, like she's really down there. Um, and then I come home and I go to the bathroom again, and then I had a bloody show. And I texted my midwife and I texted her a photo, and she was like, yep, this is a bloody show. And I was like, okay, well, what are we looking at for ETA here? And she's like, oh, in the next couple of days. I was like, what? No, my doula, she's away. Like, this can't happen now. I was really like disappointed by my doula not being there. But I had a stand-in one. But yeah, so July 2nd is when I had the bloody show. And so the next couple of days, my midwife's like, you need to rest. Like you need sustenance, you need sleep, you need to rest, because you're going to need all the rest you can get before the laboring. And I'm so glad she told me that, because yes, I rest, but I also probably would have tried to fit in things the last couple of days. And so I was just resting at home. And then a few days later, so that was the night of July 2nd. And then July 5th, so the Wednesday night, I believe, I started to have like cramps on and off. But actually, a few days before that, I was having cramps as well. And my midwife told me, like, oh, just take a bit of Panadol. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to. I don't like taking medication. And she was like, you really need to sleep, like, because I wasn't able to sleep because of the cramping. And so I took Panadol a few nights before. And then the Wednesday night, she was like, I texted her and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take Panadol and go to sleep now, like famous last words, because 2 hours later she was at my door. My husband had called her. So what had happened was the cramps got more intense. I hopped in a hot shower. My husband's like, I'm going to call Liz, your midwife. And I was like, no, don't. Like, why are you calling her? Like, she has to drive 3 hours to our house. Like, it's
3
nighttime.
hours.
Or
That's
2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours, but still.
mm,
And I was like, don't call Liz. Like, I'm not in labor. Like, don't worry. I was in such denial. So he was like, no, 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 I'm calling her. So she was at my house very quickly. I then went from the shower and I got in a hot bath. I was just feeling like I really, again, while they were setting up the birth pool in the room, I needed to just still be in water.
mm,
So that was like 11 o'clock. She came. I got into the pool, I don't know, around 12:30, like midnight. It was so beautiful. I remember getting out of the bath and walking to our living room where the pool was set up. And like all these, those LED candles, they were all around, and like they were like real candles as well. And there was a salt lamp like the one behind me, and it was like very dark, but with like hints of like glimmers of light. And I remember coming out the bathroom and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm at a party. Like I'm at my party, because like they were all standing there, like my midwife, my doula, and my husband and my dog on the couch. And I just felt like, I don't know, it was this strange feeling of like, oh, everyone's here for us.
mm,
Like it was such a beautiful feeling. And I got into the pool, and over the course of the night, I got in and out of the pool, just depending on how I was feeling, put the TENS machine on a little bit, which I loved. I loved the TENS. Um, my lower back started to hurt a bit. So my doula and my husband were taking turns kind of massaging it, like really just kneading in. And then I was on the birthing ball quite a bit. And then around, yeah, like 2:30, I think, approximately, my waters broke. I was outside of the pool, and my midwife's like, your waters just broke. And I was like, oh, okay. And I naively thought that baby would come like within the next 2 hours. I was like, oh, my water's broke, so that means baby's coming, like, which I think put me off as well, like just the endurance of it, because I had this in my
Mhm.
mind, like, oh, my water's just broke, so then baby's coming soon.
Mm.
Um, and then, yeah, it was a lot. There was one point where um, they told me to push, and I was like, but I don't feel like my body's needing to push. And they were like, well, just try. And I was like, but my body's really like, I don't feel like it's needing to push.
When was this
Um,
in your journey? Was that
this
close
was
after the water broke?
a couple of hours. I
Did
don't
she
really
at
know
any
the exact.
point, did she at any point offer a vaginal examination or do that?
She did. So originally I didn't want that. And then I changed my mind during birth, and I was very happy to have that. And I can't remember, but I think I was like 4 centimeters dilated at the point that she examined me.
And when
And
was that?
then I don't remember the time, but it was, yeah, it's
Before or
all,
after waters broke?
oh, definitely after waters broke.
Oh, after, yeah. Okay.
Yes, after, yeah, definitely. And then I got out the pool again, and she examined me, I think, a second time. And she was like, look, the reason why we've told you not to push is that your lip, like your cervical, like your lips are like blocking, like there's a blockage basically.
Well, you're
And
not fully
so,
dilated. I mean, it's not
yeah, yeah,
blocking. It's just
yeah,
you're not there yet.
yeah,
So, but I
yeah.
know I got confused because you said that they said that you should push, but now you're saying that she's saying you shouldn't push.
Yes,
So,
yes.
do you
So
want to
this
go
was like,
back to like, so
yeah,
how does that unfold? Because it,
yes.
yeah,
So yes, I know it's confusing. So they originally said I should push, but my body wasn't having the urge to push.
yes, you
And then when
weren't
I was,
ready. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
that is a silly thing to tell someone to do.
I know,
Then.
I know. And then they said that then they examined me,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like, okay, well, the lip's in the way. So get back in the pool, but you can't push. And then about maybe half an hour later, I had the urge to push. And
Great.
for anyone who knows, you can't stop that. You cannot
No,
stop an urge to push.
and
It's
you
an urge for a
shouldn't.
reason. Yeah,
You shouldn't.
exactly. So, as incredible as my birth was, for me, that was like my trauma. I think
Mm.
that for everyone, even if your birth is so positive, there's an aspect of like, maybe trauma is a very strong word, but there's an aspect of like, I don't know the word. I'll use the word trauma. Trauma is relative, but there's an aspect of like maybe feeling a bit disempowered, or just like
Mm.
spiraling out of control, or just like, this is
Mm.
not how I thought things would go. So, I was pretty traumatized at that point where they said to me for 20 minutes I couldn't push. And I was like, what do you mean I can't push? Like, I just, like, I can't hold it in. Like, I literally cannot hold it in. And I remember begging, like begging, please let me push, please let me push. And then I got out of the pool again. They examined me, and she like moved the lip out of the way,
Ah, ah,
basically.
this makes me so infuriated to hear because listen, if a woman has the urge to push, if you push, you will yourself move that lip.
I
Like
know, I
that is
know,
that
I
is
know,
something that I don't understand why
I
midwives
know,
do this.
I
If
know.
everyone is listening and they're gonna birth and their midwife says this, then do not listen to that. Like your body is wise.
Of
Like
course
there's
it
a
is. Of
reason,
course.
like if you
There's a reason that it needed to push.
and the
Yeah,
thing is, you
because I
can't
was
stop
ready.
pushing. You can't stop.
Yeah,
It's not you
yeah.
pushing, it's your
No,
womb. Like,
I know,
that's
I
silly.
know.
It's so silly. It's not like
I
you can't
know.
tell your womb, like, stop pushing or start pushing. It's like she's gonna
Mhm.
push when she
Yeah.
wants to push.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
like,
like, don't urinate, but it's like your bladder's needing to like empty. It's like, but don't urinate. It's like, but I can't hold it in. I need to urinate. Like,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
absolutely.
It's a bodily urge.
So I'm sorry
Um,
that happened to you. And
I
unfortunately,
know. Well,
this is not
I
uncommon.
know.
And
I
it's been
know. My
plenty of
midwife
times.
was really apologetic. Like, she did a lot of reflection after, and she said,
Yeah.
look, I'm really sorry how that went down, and she processed it with me. And
Hmm. That's nice.
she was lovely about it. She really was. But I think for me, that was when I look back at, like, the only thing about my birth that just
Mm.
didn't go quite nicely, it was that moment. Um, and so she then kind of moved the lip out the way, and then I do remember, because this was on the couch, my couch, I, like, shot up, and, like, I just felt like this, like, energy, and I was like, I'm ready, I'm going. And, like, I got into the pool, and I just started, like, sumo squatting and making noises and just pushing and just following what my body knew how to do all along. My husband said that my face just morphed into, like, someone he did not recognize. He was like, he was like, I can't explain it. Like, you weren't you. And I was like, of course I wasn't me. Like, you can't be yourself to birth. You have to step out of yourself and become this completely different being to birth. Um, and yeah, I was, like, sumo squatting. I do remember that, and just making such, like, primal noises, and, like, really connected to my breath. And that was around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And she came, yeah, just after, like, 3-ish, 3:30. Yeah,
Mm.
she
Beautiful.
arrived.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a journey for sure.
Yeah, sounds like it. And,
Mm,
I'm happy to hear that debriefed with your midwife and that she could see that, she interfered there because essentially, I
she
mean,
did, yeah.
it's telling you that you don't know. Your body's not like you can't trust your body. Like that's essentially what
Exactly.
that's
Yeah,
telling you, right? Oh
yeah.
no, we have to check. Like I, as the expert, have to check you to make sure that your body's not going to hurt you or your body's not going to hurt your baby or whatever. And it's like
Mm,
that's
mm.
bullshit. The whole lip thing is a bullshit
Yeah,
thing. Like in
yeah.
physiological birth, in natural birth,
Mm,
right? Not if you're lying on your back with an epidural for 20 hours.
sure,
Sure, that,
sure, that's different. Yeah,
different. Yeah. So when you're
yeah.
following your instincts, your body, if she's telling you to push, like you just let her do her thing. She
Mm,
tries
mm. Yeah,
navigate that
trust the
baby out,
woman. Yeah,
right?
trust the mother.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much to be said about, intervention. And I do still believe that not all, but some midwives, like home birthing midwives, even though they're private, they're still trained a certain way. They've still got these strands of, like, medicalized, way about them. Thankfully, for the most part, my midwife wasn't like that. I think something might have been triggered in her as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
which, we're all walking triggers. We're all human.
And she
I'm not
wanted to
upset.
help, it comes from a
Yeah,
desire to
yeah, a
help.
place of care and
Right?
help. Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And that's why it's so
Um,
important for birth workers to check themselves at the door and go
yes,
like,
yes,
what am I bringing through here? Am I bringing
yes,
previous births? Am I bringing,
yes,
what is it that I'm projecting onto this space?
absolutely.
And I work a lot with birth workers with this, both midwives
Yes,
and, doulas. And, I
doulas,
train
yeah.
birth workers myself. And this is key things that we work on like deeply for 6 months so that
Mhm,
as a birth worker,
mhm.
you don't bring this into and you don't
Absolutely.
interfere. You don't put yourself as the expert first,
Mm,
like the mother
mm.
is, right? The
The
baby.
mothers, absolutely. I
Mm.
mean, we're all the experts on our own bodies, like,
Hmm.
point one. But I think what confused me is I was having such a strong urge to push. And then she said to me, if you push and you're not ready, your cervix will get damaged. And I was like, wait a
Yeah.
minute.
No.
How does something get damaged if your body's ready to do it? Like, that makes no
Hmm.
sense to
Hmm.
me, And
Yeah.
so in the moment, I was just like, no, but I really need to do this,
Yes.
but I can't because there's fear. But I think about it, I'm like, if she wasn't there, if
Yeah.
no one was there, I would have just pushed.
Of course you
No one would
would.
have stopped
And you would
me.
have had
Like,
a
my body.
baby.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
And this
So,
is the thing, isn't it? So what that comes from, if you go back, like where does this idea come about, like with the swollen
mm,
cervix? Well, it's from women having epidurals and having like syntocinon, oxytocin,
yes,
synthetic
yes,
one,
yes.
right? Lying on their backs for a prolonged period of time, immobile.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's where they found that. That's where it comes
Yep.
from, not
Yep.
from women birthing without drugs, without interference, without
Mm.
intervention.
Yep.
So you can't
Yep.
take that knowledge
And
that
apply
you,
it
yeah, you
to
can't
something
apply it.
completely
No.
different.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
doesn't work. Yeah. So, that part of it's funny though. I don't look at my birth and just see that or
Hmm.
get upset about that. Like, it's so much bigger picture than that. Of
Of
course, in that
course.
moment was my power, temporarily, I felt like it was taken away from me.
Yeah.
Um, but, again, I've processed that, and I processed that with her too, which I think was a healing experience for both
Mm.
of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think of next birth now, though, in terms of like, so I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Australia, they're looking to make home birth really hard now. Like, if you're at a certain age, if they're trying to like pass a bill, like in
Yeah.
Parliament, that if you're a certain age, if you are even anxious or have anxiety, or if you're this or if you're that, it's like this whole list is like pretty much excluding every woman I know. And there was a survey going around, like, what would you do if like you couldn't have a midwife at your home birth? And one of the answers was free birth. And I was like, yeah, I would free birth. I would
Mm.
just actually free birth. I feel like my body knows what to do.
Mm.
I feel like I don't need anyone helping
Mhm.
me or guiding me. I feel, I don't know, insert
Yeah.
expletive, like very strong and empowered after my last birth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would I need, if it's between hospital
Yes.
and free birth, like, why
Mhm.
wouldn't I free birth? I've done it
Yeah.
before, I've home birthed before.
The powers to be, they're trying so hard to control the narrative, to control the
I know,
scenario.
I
It's not
know.
even that big in Australia, but even so, they're trying to clamp down on it. It's all over the world. It's like this. And the thing what's happening is that more and more women are just like saying that, well, then in that case, I'll just birth by myself. However, it's I think, research in Australia done in Australia
Mm,
shows that, you know, 80% of women who choose free birth actually would have wanted a chosen, trusted midwife had she had the
mm,
availability to have that financially or just in her area,
financially,
right?
yeah, yeah,
But that because
absolutely.
she was either there was no midwife there, it wasn't offered, or that she was high risk, no one would touch her, whatever, right?
Mhm,
Women then
mhm.
choose to do it on their own.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
mean, this is just going to get bigger and bigger. And
Yeah, which is
event,
in a way actually when you think about a good thing, because then there's like a
yeah,
birth rebellion,
it
right? Because
is
we're just like, "Well,
absolutely.
tough, tough. We're not gonna do it your way, and we're gonna
Yeah,
do it our way. Why should you have a say on how we birth?
yeah.
Why
And at
should
the end of
anyone
the
have a
day,
say?"
I really just think that women needs to they should have who they want to have at their birth. Like that's the most
100%.
important. If they want to
Yeah.
go off birth by themselves, in the forest with no one there, do it. If they want to have a trusted wise woman there, they should be able to have
Have
that.
access to
You
that.
know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like it
of
shouldn't be
course.
just like you shouldn't home birth if you don't feel like that's actually where you feel safest and you want that,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Like we spoke of it in the beginning, how important it is, like
Yeah,
why you choose it. The same
yeah.
thing about free birth. Like if you're choosing free birth, it needs to come from like the utter just will, desire, wanting to do that. It shouldn't come from the fear
Mm,
of having to go into hospital as the other option, right?
absolutely. Exactly. Yeah,
Important.
exactly.
So you birth your baby in the pool.
I do, and, the other thing that happened, and to be honest, like, at this time, it's like things get quite blurry, right? Like, because 'cause you're so exhausted and it's just the hormones are flooding, and I remember, like, my midwife saying, "Is it okay if I," like, she's a little stuck. "Is it okay if I, like, pull her out?"
In the
And I
water.
said, "Yeah," and I said to her, "That's fine." And she said to me after, she was really upset that she had to do that, and that, she wanted me to, like, take her out myself, but she felt that in that moment, that was the best call to make, and I kind of was like, really? Like you got upset? Like I didn't mind. Like she came straight to my arms, and I birthed her the way I wanted to. To be honest, I didn't ever like really plot out the details in terms of like, I'm going to pull her out of me. Like I just never thought I would or wouldn't. Like it was fine. Next time I will probably want to do that, now that that's like in my head. I think it's such a beautiful thing to pull your baby out yourself.
Mm.
But yeah, so then I have her in my arms, and we're in the pool for a little bit, and then I give her to my husband so that I can kind of get out of the pool. And then I get up on the couch, and we're doing the breast crawl, which is beautiful. And we did end up cutting her umbilical cord, but only when it turned white. I was kind of planning on the lotus birth. I was like tossing up between it, but then I just thought, like, I don't know, just logistically, it felt like too much for me. So I was just like, you know what, we're just going to wait. And my midwife did that anyway. She would always do the delayed cord clamping, like once it stops pulsing and it turns white. And then I was surprised, but my husband actually cut it. They asked if he wanted to cut it. And then I was just staring at my placenta on the floor. I was like, this is amazing. Then they wrapped it up, put it in the freezer. My husband, my daughter, and we buried it. We took like a pot plant, and we took like an olive tree, and
Mhm.
we put it in the soil of the olive tree. So it's outside in our backyard, which I love.
Mm.
Um, and then yeah, we did the breast crawl was like one of my favorites. Just watching her find her way to me for nourishment.
Mm.
And then I think after a little bit, don't remember the time, but they asked me if I wanted to get into a shower. So they helped me in a shower, and I just washed off, and then they all cleaned up, and they dressed me in pajamas. Like I was really taken care of. And then the best part is you get into your own bed. I think that's like amazing. And then we got into bed as a family of three, I should say four. Our little dog was on the side, and yeah, we've been co-sleeping with her since she was born, and yeah, she's amazing. I think that birth is such an overlooked thing in terms of foundation of like how a baby's temperament's going to be, how they're going to um, attach, how they are going to, um, how well their breastfeeding is going to go. I feel like there's such a strong correlation between like emergency C-sections or really traumatic births, and then the mum's really unable to breastfeed, or she's got problems with milk supply. And you talk to your general person, like, your everyday person, and they don't know that.
Mm.
There were so many people around me who were just like, wow, you're brave for home birthing. And I'm like, really? Why is that brave? Like, I actually said to them, like, why do you think that's brave?
Yeah. Because that's the narrative, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
depicted as the most dangerous things you can do. And I mean,
Yeah.
that narrative is going around. There's doctors, with these ridiculous reels telling the public, like on Instagram, whatever, TikTok, how absolutely dangerous it is and how we're not made to birth. And that if we weren't saved by our own species, we would not, all this ridiculousness, because that is
Crazy.
truly what they believe, because that's
I
what they see,
know.
right? They see that in
Mm,
hospital. There are, there's
mm,
emergencies upon emergencies all the time there because that's
mm.
what they do. Like,
Yeah, but there's a cascade of intervention.
mhm,
And therefore, after that cascade of intervention, things
they're
start
creating
going
it.
wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I think I do feel the narrative's shifting. I'm hearing about, a lot more people who signed up to have elective C-sections, and then they've shifted to have home births. And that
Yeah.
gives me so much hope that the narrative is changing.
Absolutely, because actually, women who choose home birth are similar to the women who choose elective cesareans. It's about controlling a situation that both of these women know that the system is so flawed and that they're most likely going to go in there and experience trauma, right? So to
So
avoid
true.
avoid that trauma, they're choosing either home birth or elective cesarean. So it's quite similar people
Mm.
actually who do
It's
that.
so true. I've never
Yeah.
thought of that before. That's very, very true.
Yeah, so it's a lot of time really educated women. It's just where are they
Mm.
finding their facts, right? That bring them
Yes.
either to home birth or to elective
Or to
cesarean, right?
yes,
Depends on
yes,
what where they're looking, right?
yes.
So
Yeah,
their
exactly. Where
worldview,
they're getting
yeah.
that information from.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So if you had a first time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she really wants to
Mhm.
have a natural, empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
I would tell her that if she wants it, she can have it, and that she's not dreaming too big,
Mm,
that it's her birth, it's no one else's. It's not
mhm,
even her partner's birth. Um, that she needs to really tune into what she needs, what she desires, the outcome she wants without being attached,
mm,
and finding that balance between surrender but also desire, right? So strongly desiring what she wants, but also surrendering any attachment to any outcome.
mm,
I would also say to her to keep the noise outside of her and not let it permeate her. That again, she knows best. She can trust herself and her body and her baby.
mhm,
I would also say to her that she can keep it to herself. You know, if she wants to home birth, if she wants to do this, if she wants to do that, because that's something that I did actually that I loved is I didn't tell many people I was home birthing. I didn't feel like hearing their fears projected onto me because I knew
mhm,
that none of their fears were my fears. It was all their stuff.
mhm,
And I just didn't feel like being a vessel for that. So I would also say, you know, go within, be more
mm,
private if you need to.
mm,
And I think that goes for beyond, you know, pregnancy and birthing. It goes for your motherhood decisions. I don't tell everyone what I do, you know, if they aren't able to receive it
yeah.
well, you know. Um, but yeah, I would just say trust, surrender,
Mm,
and go within, really.
mm, mm. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So welcome.
Thank you for sharing your birth story. It's been a pleasure
Of
having you.
course. It's amazing how the timing of it all synchronizes with it's almost a year later. Wow.
Yeah, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.